That night, in the small room, old Mr. Khôn suddenly woke up. His forehead was drenched in sweat, his breath heavy and uneven. Outside, the wind rustled through the bamboo leaves, whispering like echoes from a distant memory, one he thought had long been buried under the dust of time. The dream he had was not just an ordinary dream. It was the return of painful images, his childhood, wrapped in the smoke and fire of war and an unending sorrow. In the dream, he became that thin little boy again, Khôn, huddled by the fire in their thatched cottage by the Look River. He could hear his mother's voice calling, his father, old teacher Boo, giving gentle advice, and the laughter of his two younger siblings running around like pure songs of a peaceful time. But then, from afar, came the crack of gunfire. Flames lit up the sky across the river, smoke rose thick into the night, and the terrified screams of people echoed all around. The whole family panicked, grabbing what little they could, rushing toward the boat. The image of his father, a strong man with a face darkened by smoke and hardship, rowing the small boat through the fierce current, appeared vividly before him. In those eyes shone both fear and determination. He had to save his wife and children, even if there was only the faintest glimmer of hope. Yet fate was cruel. A burst of gunfire shattered the night. His father fell, blood spreading red across the river. The boat rocked violently, then overturned, swallowing the cries of his mother and the two little ones. Little Khôn struggled in the freezing water, his tiny hands reaching out to grasp his mother's shadow. But everything was sinking. His cry, "Mother!" echoed through the waves before fading into the endless darkness. Mr. Khôn awoke with a jolt. The dark room was silent except for the ticking clock. His heart ached as though he had just lived through that tragedy again. More than 70 years had passed, yet the wound never healed. He sighed softly and looked out the window. The pale moonlight spread over the empty yard like a white shroud laid upon long-sleeping memories. But tonight, the past had awakened, calling his name with the voice of a lost childhood. Back then, Diem village by the Look River was still peaceful. In the early mornings, mist covered the paths, and the scent of young rice filled the cool air. The crowing of roosters, the laughter of children, the sound of Khôn's mother tending the fire, all painted a gentle, serene picture of the countryside. In the small straw-roofed house, 6-year-old Khôn, thin, bright-eyed, with black eyes that sparkled like beads, was the joy of his parents' life. His father, teacher Boo, was a man of learning and virtue, honest, kind, and noble. He taught the village children to read, lived a simple, righteous life, and believed in moral values above all. Khôn's mother was gentle and hardworking. At the market in the morning, in the fields by afternoon. His two younger siblings, little Nu and boy Num, were always at her side, their laughter ringing like drops of sunlight on the river's surface. On summer noons, Khôn followed his father to the riverbank, watching bamboo boats float by, carrying bananas, straw, and laughter downstream. His father often told him stories about the river, about those who left and found their way home again. He would say, "Khôn, my son, life is like this river, sometimes calm, sometimes stormy. But no matter how far the water flows, it always returns to its source." Then one morning, peace shattered. Gunshots echoed from the edge of the village, shouts, pounding footsteps, chaos. The words of his father, which little Khôn once heard and forgot, would later become the very thread that bound him through a life of running and loss. A few neighbors stumbled past the gate, shouting as they ran, "They're back! The French are back! They're burning houses, taking people away!" Teacher Boo's face turned pale. He hurriedly stuffed a few belongings into a sack. Khôn's mother grabbed baby Nu, pulled little Num by the hand, and called out to him. The whole family rushed toward the riverbank, where their small wooden boat, used during harvest season, waited. The sky seemed to collapse. Smoke and fire filled the air behind them. Gunfire cracked sharply in the distance, echoing across the river until even the water seemed to tremble. Father rowed frantically, his breathing heavy. Mother knelt in the boat, trembling as she prayed. Khôn sat between them, holding his two siblings, tears rolling down his cheeks. He heard his father's voice over the roar of the wind. "Don't be afraid. I'll get us across the river. Our relatives will help us there." But fate was merciless. A group of French soldiers appeared on the opposite bank, rifles in hand. They shouted and pointed toward the boat. Then came the deafening crack of gunfire, tearing the air apart. A bullet struck Teacher Boo in the shoulder. He gasped, whispering only, "Run!" before collapsing. The boat rocked violently. Mother screamed, trying to reach for her husband, but a sudden wave threw her and the two children into the river. Panicked, Gon jumped after them, catching only a glimpse of his mother's hair glimmering in the bloody water. He struggled, calling out, "Mother!" but the furious current swallowed everything whole. He didn't know how long he drifted. The sound of gunfire faded, leaving only the rhythm of water and his pounding heart. When he awoke, he found himself lying on a cold, sandy shore. Beside him stood a thin man with a bearded face, looking down. It was Uncle Jiao, the banana trader who often passed through Diem village. Uncle Jiao had saved him, brought him aboard his boat, cooked rice porridge, and nursed him back to life. When he learned that Gon's entire family was gone, the man fell silent, then sighed softly. "This poor boy. Life is long, child. From now on, call me father and I'll call you son. Maybe together we'll survive this cruel world." From that day on, Gon was no longer Gon. Uncle Jiao gave him a new name, Khôn, hoping he would live wisely so the world could not crush him. That name followed him for the rest of his life. The 6-year-old boy, now alone, left behind his homeland, left behind the blood-stained Look River. At night, lying on the boat, he would listen to the waves against the hull, imagining they were his mother's lullaby. "Don't be afraid, my child. I'm still here with you." Each time, Gon turned his face to the side of the boat, his tears soaking the pillow. His childhood, an age meant for meadows, cicadas, and kites, had become days of drifting and loneliness. The war had taken everything from him: his home, his family, his childhood. But it had also planted within his heart a single, enduring seed, a longing to live, to return, and to love, just like before. From that moment on, Gon's childhood came to an end, like a torn, crumpled page soaked with tears and the red blood of his homeland's river. From then, the two drifted together upon the waters, wandering from place to place. Gon helped Uncle Jiao sell bananas, sometimes loading goods, sometimes rowing the boat. In the quiet evenings, the two sat by the fire. The old man would tell stories of life, of people who had lost their homes, then fall silent, gazing at the rushing river. In his eyes, Gon could see all the sorrow of a wandering soul. But Uncle Jiao was old and often ill. Before he passed away, he asked an acquaintance in the Hongai mining region, a widowed woman, gentle and kind-hearted, to take in the poor boy. She agreed, moved by his misfortune, and brought him into her small, tile-roofed house nestled against the dark mountain slopes. From that day, Gon finally had a new home, a new mother. Though they shared no blood, she loved him as her own child. Once thought was nigh. In those gentle arms, the orphaned boy slowly found the warmth of a family, a warmth he gone forever. In the first days at the Hongai mines, Gon, now known by his new name, Khôn, was bewildered by this strange new world. Gone were the gentle rivers and golden fields. In their place rose black mountain ridges and processions of miners marching through the morning mist. The air was thick with the dry, acrid scent of coal, frightening yet fascinating to the boy from the plains. The widow, Khon's foster mother, was a kind, hard-working woman. She labored at the coal sorting yard every day, hauling heavy baskets on her back, her shirt soaked in sweat. Though life was harsh, she gave Khôn all the tenderness of a real mother's love. She taught him how to light a fire, how to wash clothes, how to save every grain of rice. At night, under the dim glow of an oil lamp, she told him stories about miners who had perished deep underground, about orphans cared for by the whole village. Khôn would listen quietly, his heart swelling with both gratitude and sorrow. Though life was cruel, there were still hearts warm as fire in the coldest night. Thanks to his foster mother, he was able to attend school with the other children in the miners' village. At first, they teased him for his country accent and patched up clothes, but over time, through his diligence and respect, he earned their affection. Time passed. The war ended. The country began to rebuild. The mining region changed too. Tunnels expanded, and the roar of engines replaced the clinking of pickaxes. By then, Khôn had grown into a strong young man, tall, broad-shouldered, with deep, sorrowful eyes. He followed the older miners underground, working tirelessly, unafraid of hardship. Coal dust covered his hair and skin, but in his heart still burned a bright flame, the will to live and gratitude toward the mother who had taken him in. Every day after his shift, Khôn would come home, boil water to wash his mother's feet, and tell her stories from the mine. She would only smile gently, hold his hand, and whisper. Those simple words stayed with Khôn all his life. Amid the howling wind over the coal hills and the dim lamplight of the nights, he came to realize. Homeland is not only the place where we are born, but also where we are loved, where someone gives us a chance to begin again. And it was right here, in this dusty mining land, that Khôn began to grow, not just in body but in spirit, becoming a strong, resilient man who still carried in his heart the unending longing for his river-bound homeland. Life in the mines was harsh, yet filled with warmth and compassion. Each morning, Khôn rose early with his mother, lit the stove, and prepared the meal to carry into the pit. They depended on each other, two lives finding warmth amid the shadows. His foster mother Aunt Tu often said, "In this life, we're not afraid of hardship, only of letting our hearts grow cold." Those words Khôn carved deep into his heart, but fate seemed unwilling to let him rest. Years of exhausting labor and breathing in coal dust had taken their toll. Aunt Tu's lungs grew weaker by the day. It began with a mild cough, then came the blood. Though Khôn tried to hide his worry, her sharp eyes saw everything. One night, as the wind howled outside, she held his hand, her voice trembling. "I know my time is running out, my son. There's something I must tell you, before it's too late." Khôn froze, and she began to reveal the truth she had kept hidden for so long. That years ago, his parents had not been killed by the French simply for fleeing. The real reason was far more tragic. The French officer in charge of their district had violated Khôn's mother. His father, Teacher Bu, in a fit of rage, struck the man dead. And so, the family had to flee under the cover of night until that fateful tragedy on the river. Hearing this, Khôn felt as if the world had stopped. Each word cut into his soul like a blade reopening an old wound. All these years, he had lived with a vague ache of loss, and now it was joined by a pain too heavy to name. His parents were not only victims of war, they were victims of injustice, crushed by the arrogance of those who held power. Aunt Tu looked at him, her eyes full of tenderness. "Don't hold hatred in your heart, my son. They're gone now, but you're still here. Live well, live so that they can rest in peace." A few days later, her illness grew worse. The coughing fits racked her frail body. Khôn stayed awake through the nights, feeding her spoonfuls of porridge, wiping the sweat from her brow. Her breathing became shallow, like smoke fading into air. Her trembling hands searched for his. "My child, I didn't give you life, but you've been my own flesh and blood. If one day you can go back to your homeland, light incense for your parents. They've been waiting for you for so long." Her words faded into silence. Then, with a gentle sigh, she closed her eyes, peaceful at last. Outside, the wind swept through the coal hills, echoing like the mountain's own sobs. Khôn fell to his knees beside the bed, tears soaking his shirt. For the second time in his life, he had lost a mother. Another who had given him love, warmth, and the kindness to keep on living. After the funeral, the small house by the mountainside felt unbearably empty. Every night, Khôn would look up at the altar, where two incense bowls stood side by side, one for his birth parents and one for his foster mother. His chest tightened with grief. He knew then that, though the war had long ended, its losses, the ones carved deep into human hearts, would never truly fade. From that moment on, Khôn lived more quietly. He still went down to the mine every day, still worked diligently, but his eyes carried the quiet weight of someone who had been orphaned twice. And it was during those lonely days that fate opened a door for him once more, an unexpected encounter with a woman named Liu, who would warm his heart after so many long, cold years. Khôn's youth passed in silence. After the tragedy of losing his foster mother, he threw himself entirely into his work at the coal mine. By day, he labored amidst the smoke and dust. By night, he would sit by the window, listening to the cicadas' incessant calls, gazing up at the vast starry sky, his heart sinking. Inside him, loneliness was like a scar that would not heal, quietly persistent yet profoundly deep. One early autumn morning, while dew still clung to the leaves, Khôn was assigned to deliver goods to the town. On the rugged road along the mountainside, he met Liu, a new teacher who had just moved to teach at the primary school near the mine. She was struggling with a flat bicycle tire, her long hair lightly fluttering in the breeze, her deep black eyes shining with intelligence and kindness. Gon stopped his vehicle and gently asked, "May I help you with that?" Leo looked up and smiled in gratitude, a pure smile like a drop of morning dew. From that moment, Gon's heart, which had been closed for years, suddenly stirred like a string on a wind-touched instrument. After that encounter, they met more often. Leo would go to school early, and Gon worked the morning shift at the mine. Their brief, casual greetings gradually turned into intimate conversations by a small stream. Leo spoke of the poor children she loved as if they were her own, of her dream to open a charity class for the children of mine workers. Gon shared stories of his orphaned childhood, of Uncle Jiao, of the mother who had taken him in. Leo listened silently, her eyes brimming with tears, perhaps from admiration, perhaps from a deep, heartfelt affection for him. Their feelings grew naturally, like wild grass by the roadside. Quietly, without promises, only understanding and warmth in every glance. Many nights, Leo would bring him a pot of chicken porridge when he returned home late from work, and he would diligently repair her leaking roof. They shared life's small moments, and before they realized it, love had quietly taken root in their hearts. Yet, that love was far from easy. Leo came from a wealthy family in the lowlands, and her parents strongly opposed her falling for a poor mine worker. They called her home, arranging another, more suitable match. Leo cried but refused to yield. She said, "People don't live by status, but by the heart. Gon may be poor, but he has a heart that few possess." Leo returned to the mining region, ignoring the threats of being disowned. She sought out Gon, her trembling hands holding his, tears in her eyes. "If you still care for me, don't leave me. No matter what happens, I choose to stay here." Gon was silent for a long moment, then gripped her hand tightly and replied, "My life has been full of loss, but perhaps meeting you is the greatest gift that fate has given me." From then on, they rebuilt the small house together on the mountainside, the place where Leo taught the village children, and Gon continued working at the mine. In the afternoons, he would sit and listen to the children practicing their lessons, a peaceful feeling settling over him. After so many years of storms and hardships, he had finally found a place to lean on. A home, a heart, and the faith that life still held miracles. After all the trials, Gon and Leo finally became husband and wife. Their wedding had no grand procession, no lavish feast. Only a few close relatives, some students holding wildflowers and laughing loudly, and sunlight streaming down onto the small yard by the mountainside. The bride wore a simple white ao dye, while the groom was a sun-tanned man with gentle eyes. They held each other's hands, with the wind whistling from the distant mine, as if nature itself bore witness to their steadfast love. Life after marriage was not easy, but it was filled with simple joys. Early each morning, Leo would rise to light the stove and cook hot rice for her husband to take to work. Gon repaired fences, swept the yard, then packed his lunch into a cloth bag, giving a gentle kiss on his wife's forehead before heading to the mine. In the evenings, when dusk fell over the coal hills, during winter nights, in their small home, they would gather around the hearth. Leo mended her husband's clothes while Gon recounted old stories, tales of Uncle Jiao, and memories of the river from his childhood. Each time, Leo would gently place her hand on his shoulder, as if soothing the old, lingering wounds. To her, Gon was not just a husband, but a symbol of perseverance, endurance, and kindness, a man who had overcome all suffering to preserve a pure heart. Then came joyful news. That year, spring arrived early. Plum blossoms blanketed the hills in white. The sound of children in Leo's womb seemed like a call of happiness. Gon embraced his wife, tears welling in his eyes. "I once thought there was nothing left to hold on to in life, but now I have you, our child, and a real home." During her pregnancy, Leo continued teaching, smiling at her students as always. Gon cared for his wife diligently, returning from work to tend the stove, cook porridge, and chop firewood. Though the house was small, it was filled with laughter and conversation. Their love flowed like a cool stream, nourishing hope for a bright future. When their first son was born, they named him An, wishing for him a life of peace, free from the storms his parents had faced. On the first night hearing his baby cry, Gon stayed awake, soothing and smiling. In that moment, he felt as if all his past losses had been made whole. In the years that followed, life remained hard but calm. Gon continued working at the mine, respected by his colleagues for his diligence and honesty. Leo opened a small school in their yard, teaching children of poor workers to read and write. Each morning, the children's voices blended with the birdsong, filling the village with renewed life. In the evenings, Leo would meet her husband at the top of the slope, holding their son's hand, and the three would walk home together under the red glow of sunset. On rainy days, Gon would carry their child while Leo held an umbrella over them both. The stream by the roadside swelled with rainwater, yet their laughter rang out through the storm, strangely warm and comforting. Their love needed no flowery words. It was woven from rice and daily toil, from lullabies sung in the middle of the night, and from hand-holding through stormy days. Many in the region called them the golden couple of the mine, for wherever they were, there was kindness, children's laughter, and human warmth. Life went on, gently and deeply. Sometimes Gon would look back on the path he had traveled, from a lonely orphan child to a man with a home, a loving wife, and a healthy, lively child, and feel boundless gratitude. He understood that happiness was not far away. It lay in the simple things we nurture each day. During these peaceful years, the flame of love between Gon and Leo burned steadily. Not brilliant, but warm and enduring, like the glow of an oil lamp in the dark. That light guided their lives through difficult times, leading them toward a new dawn filled with faith and hope. Yet after these peaceful years, when it seemed happiness would last forever in their small home, fate tested Gon and Leo once again. That year, heavy rain poured for days. The entire mining area flooded. Soil and rocks tumbled down the mountains, sweeping away houses and dreams of the working people. Gon and his rescue team plunged into the floodwaters, saving those trapped in the mines. Leo stayed at home, holding their child by the window, watching the torrential rain, her heart burning with worry. That afternoon, a loud explosion erupted from the main shaft. The ground shook, and the entire area was engulfed in dust and smoke. People screamed and ran in panic. News came, a group of miners was trapped, including Gon. Leo froze, her body trembling. She could only hand her child to a neighbor before running several kilometers to the mine. Chaos hit her eyes, mud and debris everywhere, injured people lying scattered. For 3 days and nights, the rescue team dug desperately. Leo sat by the shaft entrance, clothes smeared with dirt, her face pale. Each sound of a shovel, each call from beneath the earth pierced her heart. When hope was nearly gone, they found Gon, covered in mud from head to toe, breathing weakly but alive. He was brought out amid cheers and stifled cries. But the storm was not over. Gon was severely injured, his lungs poisoned from long exposure to smoke and coal dust. The doctor said he needed long-term treatment in Hanoi. Leo sold everything she could, from chickens, old furniture, to her wedding ring, hoping to save her husband. She cared for him with every bowl of porridge, every nap, but Gon's health continued to decline. On some nights, he would hold his wife's hand, his voice hoarse. "If someday something happens to me, you must promise. You must go on and take care of our child." Leo burst into tears, shaking her head. "Don't say that. You will get better. I believe in you." That winter, snow blanketed the mountain peaks, and the hospital room was silent, except for the wind whistling through the cracks. Gon dozed in his wife's arms, a faint smile on his lips, as if dreaming of a peaceful day yet to come. In the quiet mountainside, where the sound of a child's laughter echoed through the windy afternoons, Leo held her husband, tears streaming endlessly. She knew that a part of her heart had gone with him forever. After the funeral, Leo returned to the small house, where memories remained intact. Each morning, she continued teaching the children, singing lullabies to her child, the same songs Gon once hummed. At night, the oil lamp still burned in the empty house, as if Gon were there somewhere, silently watching over the two of them. The storm had taken him, but it also left Leo with a new strength. The strength of love, of memory, and of faith. She understood that even in separation, those who have truly loved one another are never completely lost. They simply take different forms. One remains, the other becomes wind, becomes stars, forever illuminating a small home on the coal-covered mountainside. After Gon's departure, the little house felt unusually empty. Every morning, Leo would rise early, light the stove, brew tea as she always had, but her husband's chair at the wooden table remained vacant. Sometimes she would instinctively turn to ask him something, only to freeze in the silent emptiness. Yet amid the loneliness, a small flame persisted. Their son, An, the remaining hope in Leo's life, and grew up to the sound of the wind whistling through the coal mine and his mother's deep, soothing lullabies. The boy was intelligent, gentle, and had the same calm, deep eyes as his father. Every evening, Leo would tell him stories of his brave father, the man who once plunged into the earth to save others during floods, the man who cherished happiness with calloused hands, and listened intently, sometimes silent for a long while, then asked, "Mom, when I grow up, can I be like Dad?" Leo smiled, tears welling in her eyes. "As long as you live kindly and love others, you are already like your father." Time passed, and Anne grew quickly, like a forest tree after the rain. He excelled in his studies, always at the top of his class, and was beloved by his friends. When he entered high school, Anne resolved to apply to the mining engineering school, the same place his father once worked. At first, Leo worried, fearing her son would face the dangers Gohan had endured. But then she realized this was Anne's way of continuing his father's unfinished dreams. On the day Anne received his acceptance letter, Leo stood silently on the porch. The afternoon sky bathed the mountains in red, the wind brushing through her graying hair. She seemed to hear Gohan's gentle voice somewhere, softly saying, "Leo, our child has grown." She smiled, a smile both joyful and tinged with sorrow. During the years Anne studied far from home, he sent letters to his mother regularly. In each letter, he wrote about friends, studies, and nights spent gazing at the stars, remembering his father's words through the stories his mother had told. He wrote, "Mom, I believe Dad is still watching over us. Whenever I feel tired, I think of him in the mines. I think of you lighting the lamp on cold nights waiting for us. That thought makes me stronger." Leo read the letters, tears soaking the pages, yet her heart felt unusually warm. She understood that the flame of her family's memories still burned, not a flame of sorrow, but of faith and love. Many years later, Anne became the chief engineer at the very coal mine where his father once worked. On his first day back in the old mountainous region, he stood silently for a long time before the memorial plaque honoring the workers who had fallen. On that plaque, his father's name was clearly engraved, Nguyen Van Goan, 1975 to 2003. The wind blew, coal dust swirled, and he bowed his head, softly saying, "Father, I have come home." That day, when Anne returned home, Leo welcomed him in her old Ao Baba, her hair silvered with age, yet her eyes remained gentle as ever. The mother and son sat together on the porch, watching the sunset over the mountainside, and held his mother's hand and whispered, "Mom, from now on, I will take care of you, just as father did." Leo looked at her son, her lips trembling. "My son, your father would be very proud of you." That evening, the last rays of sunlight fell on the moss-covered roof tiles, illuminating the family photo on the altar, where Gon still smiled with his gentle face. Outside, the voices of children studying echoed, birds called to one another atop the trees, and inside the small house, the flame of memories still burned quietly, as if it had never gone out. Because love, even after weathering storms, can transform into light, guiding the generations that follow, steady and complete, just like the love of Gon and Leo all those years ago.